"That's the wrong formula," the waitress whispered to the billionaire. Just before, the chandeliers of the Grand Orpheum Hotel glimmered like frozen fire. Suits, gowns, and polished shoes moved gracefully across the marble floors as the world's elite gathered for the annual Global Innovation Summit. Investors, inventors, and magnates mingled, their conversations weaving together a tapestry of ambition and wealth. At the heart of the grand ballroom sat Damian Wycliffe, a billionaire whose empire stretched across pharmaceuticals, clean energy, and artificial intelligence. He was a man people described with hushed reverence, brilliant, ruthless, and untouchable. Tonight, he was to unveil what he claimed would change the world forever, but not everyone in that room saw him as untouchable. In the far corner, balancing a tray of champagne flutes, was Clara Vance, a waitress in her mid-20s. With her auburn hair pinned neatly under her cap and her uniform crisp but plain, she blended seamlessly with the other staff. Yet behind her soft eyes burned a storm of thoughts. She wasn't just a waitress. She was once a chemist, a promising researcher who had spent 3 years working in a private lab under a grant she thought was meant for humanitarian breakthroughs. That grant, she later discovered, was quietly absorbed into Damian Wycliffe's empire. Her research, her formulas, were stolen, patented, and repackaged under his name. And tonight, he was about to present one of them. The Whisper. Damian stood at the podium, his voice smooth and commanding. A large screen lit up behind him, displaying chemical equations, charts, and projections. "Ladies and gentlemen," Damian declared, "what you see here will not only end energy scarcity, but will redefine human longevity. A single serum, derived from a revolutionary biochemical formula, capable of repairing damaged cells, prolonging life, and eradicating degenerative disease." The crowd gasped, then broke into applause. Billionaires smelled profit, doctors saw miracles, and governments imagined control. But Clara froze. She recognized the equations glowing on the screen. They were hers. But something was different. A single line, a minor substitution in one compound, had been altered. And it wasn't a harmless change. Clara knew that variation. She had tested it once in the early days of her research. Instead of repairing cells, it destabilized them. Instead of granting longevity, it accelerated cellular collapse. In animals, it led to rapid organ failure. If Damian's serum was manufactured at scale, it wouldn't save lives, it would destroy them. Her throat tightened. Should she stay silent? Who would believe a waitress in a borrowed uniform against a billionaire's carefully staged spectacle? Security guards lingered by every exit, and cameras broadcasted Damian's every word to a worldwide audience. But Clara couldn't let it happen. She couldn't let her stolen work become a global tragedy. When Damian stepped down briefly from the stage, handing his assistant a vial of the serum for a live demonstration, Clara made her move. She slipped closer, her tray still in hand, until she stood right beside him. As the audience held its breath, she leaned in, pretending to offer him a glass of champagne. "That's the wrong formula," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the applause. Damian stiffened. For a moment, his polished smile faltered. His sharp eyes flicked to hers. "What did you say?" he murmured back, almost inaudible. "Check the sequence again. You've made a substitution. If you go through with this, people will die. A dangerous game." He studied her face, confusion twisting into suspicion. "Who are you?" Clara's pulse raced. "Someone who knows what you stole." Damian's smile returned, flawless as ever, but his jaw tightened. He raised his glass to the crowd, pretending her words hadn't rattled him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said smoothly, "behold the world had crowned Clara Vance a hero. Overnight, she went from an anonymous waitress to a global headline, the waitress who stopped the billionaire. Universities sent her invitations, scientists hailed her bravery, and human rights groups called her a guardian of truth. For weeks, Clara could barely walk the streets of the city without someone stopping to thank her. But not everyone celebrated her. Behind the cameras and the courtrooms, Damian Wycliffe's empire still breathed. His board members, investors, and shadowy allies had too much at stake. Though the billionaire himself now faced trial for fraud and reckless endangerment, Clara knew better than to think he would fall quietly. Shadows in the light. It started subtly. Her emails were hacked. Her phone rang in the middle of the night with silence on the other end. Once, she returned to her apartment to find her research notes shuffled out of order on her desk, though she had locked the door that morning. Her friends told her she was paranoid. "Damien's finished. You saw the news," they said. But Clara felt the pressure building, like a storm gathering just beyond the horizon. Damien wasn't the type to lose gracefully. One night, as she worked late in a rented university lab, she noticed a black car parked across the street. Its engine idled for hours. The next day, it was there again. And the day after. An unexpected ally. She wasn't entirely alone. Professor Harold Ashcroft, the Nobel laureate who had spoken up during Damien's presentation, had taken her under his wing. A wiry man with sharp eyes, Harold had once been a titan of biochemistry before retiring to teach. "You expose something monstrous," he told her one evening over tea. "People like Damien don't vanish when exposed. They retreat, regroup, and strike back." Clara swallowed hard. "So what do I do?" "You keep going. Publish your findings. Share the real formula. If you don't, they'll bury it, and you with it." The warning. 2 weeks later, Clara received an unmarked envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 4 words: "Stop, or you're next." Her hands shook as she held the note. The letters were blocky, typed, untraceable. She almost crumpled it and called the police. But something stopped her. If she went to the authorities, they might dismiss it as a prank, or worse, they might already be compromised. Damien's reach had stretched deep before. Instead, she locked the note away, tightened her security, and pressed forward. But the threats escalated. Someone slashed her bicycle tires. A brick smashed through her apartment window, wrapped in a second note. "We warned you." One night, she came home to find her door ajar and the faint smell of cigarette smoke inside. Nothing was stolen. They had only wanted her to know they'd been there. The return of Damien. The day of Damien's trial was chaos. Protesters lined the courthouse steps. Cameras flashed. Clara was subpoenaed as the star witness. Inside, she faced him again. Damien sat at the defendant's table, immaculate in a tailored suit, as though the scandal hadn't touched him. His expression was calm, confident, too confident for a man whose empire was crumbling. When their eyes met across the room, Clara felt a chill crawl up her spine. His gaze wasn't angry. It was calculating. As she testified, recounting the stolen research and the deadly substitution, Damien never flinched. Instead, he leaned back, fingers steepled, a faint smile tugging at his lips. When the court adjourned, Clara overheard him speak quietly to his lawyer, just loud enough for her to catch, "This isn't over." The offer. A week later, Clara was invited to a private meeting by a group of venture capitalists who claimed they wanted to fund her continued research. The meeting was set at a luxurious office tower downtown. Nervous but hopeful, Clara arrived and immediately sensed something was wrong.